Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin met today on the sidelines of a regional summit in Uzbekistan. Sources say trade and geopolitics were on the agenda, and Russia's Premier Putin congratulated India for the SCO presidency and wished every success to friends from India. Russian ambassador to India previously appreciated India's consistent, independent and well-balanced response to the Ukraine conflict. Sources say that Prime Minister Modi and Putin also discussed trade as well as sales of Russian fertilizers and mutual food supplies, as India is looking for a 3-year fertilizer import deal with Russia. Let's talk about what India-Russia means for the SCO and the world as well. Joining me on the platform to talk more about this is Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee, former diplomat. Also with us on the show is Mr. Alexei Maslov, researcher, HSE University. Dr. Olga Leonidovna, PhD Associate Professor, Researcher at the HSC University, also joins us on the show. MJ Augustine, former Indian Air Force defense expert, joining us on the show as well. Colonel Sanjeet Sirohi, defense expert, also joins us on the program to talk more about this. Ambassador Mukherjee, I'd like to begin with you, ma'am. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, Vineet, I can.
Ma'am, the bonhomie and the love and the affection that was visible between the Prime Minister and Vladimir Putin during this very brief, short exchange is, indicative of one fact and one fact alone. Come what may, come what allies you lose or you choose, India and Russia are strong, will stay strong and have been strong in the past as well. In fact, the Russian president seemed to be very candid and very, very frank about the war on Ukraine and how that has minimized a lot of good intentions that the country had when it came to India, and also invited the Prime Minister to visit Russia as soon as possible.
Very well said, Vineet. I agree with you that such old friends like the former USSR, now the Russian Federation and India, this is a friendship that is time-tested. The Russians stood by us when we had no friends, when the world was a very different place. And naturally, we would like to continue at the same level the relationship that we have with Russia. The only issue is that because of Ukraine, but even before that, after the Russians signed this friendship treaty with China, it put India's relationship with Russia on a slightly awkward keel, if I may put it like that, because we would have preferred if the Russians would have understood two things. First, that going into China's embrace and emerging as China's junior partner is not good for Russia, which is a great power anchored with Europe, anchored with Asia, and with strategic perspective very different from China. And secondly, that we would have wanted Russia to appreciate that China's designs towards India and the line of actual control, the salami slicing of India's territory, is an issue where we would have expected Russia to not only extend a helping hand, but to try and wean away China from such an aggressive policy towards India. Today's meeting, I'm sure, provided a welcome opportunity for our Prime Minister to reassure President Putin that India stands with Russia and that we would like the Ukraine conflict to end as soon as possible. We would like Russia to be restored back to the position that it enjoyed before Ukraine, firmly in the center of international politics and not be isolated. But at the same time, privately, he must have assured President Putin that we would prefer if Russia could rethink their policy towards China, which is not in their interest, in our perspective, and it's certainly not in the interest of a strengthened Russia-Indian friendship. Because when you have a third party there that is completely inimical to you, that wants to ensure that you can never rise out of your own neighborhood, then how on earth can India then depend on Russia, its long-term friend and long-time ally, to do what it did for us in the past? So that's something we need to sort out privately, not in a meeting, one-to-one, and I'm sure that that must have happened by now. Vineet.
Thank you, ma'am. Great points there. Alexei Maslov, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Hello. Yeah.
Alexei, would it be right to say that India and Russia this pairing that has come together is definitely strong enough for Vladimir Putin to in fact try and get India and China to dissolve their differences, because a stronger India and China and a friendlier India and China is perhaps the best thing that Russia could expect in the face of the world sanctions that have come about their way because of Ukraine.
Well, I think that the best way for Russia is just to support the triangle Russia, China, India. So not just to separate India from China and to make some unilateral relations with India or with China, but to form the alliance. No, I don't speak about the military alliance, but say geopolitical alliance between Russia, China, in India. Formally, this alliance already exists. That's why we discuss a lot of questions in the triangle, for example, in the diplomatic level. But in the real sense, in the practical sense, this triangle doesn't work so far. So that's why, for example, for me, it's very important that Mr. Putin met Mr. Modi in the framework of the meeting of the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So it means that we should be more open-minded to other countries. And I'm agree that if Russia will have just one side of relations with China, so it means that China, because of the very huge economic potential of China, China could oppress some Russian initiatives. But look at the present moment. China is the biggest buyer of the Russian gas and oil. In fact, China could not survive without Russian gas and oil. And at the same time, China could provide some technologies. So I think that, for example, in this way, so it means gas and oil, energy in exchange for new technology, could be a very favorable moment for both countries. At the same time, we already discussed Russia has discussed with India. It means two package of questions. The first one, it's a question of the geopolitical stability. That's very important for this region. And another question, it's the question of the economic cooperation that could be very providing very favorable for both sides. So I think that in this way we can combine economic means and political means, and this moment is the right moment to speak about it.
All right, great points there. Colonel Siroi, if you can hear me. Colonel Siroi, if you're there with us.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, sir. So what do you make of the SCO summit and India and Russia's presence, a friendly presence? Is this going to encourage the rest of the countries in this summit, to have a bilateral bonhomie and agreement and friendliness, just the way India and Russia have? And is that a motivation, perhaps even for Xi Jinping, to let down his guard and ego and try and get along with the world?
Well, Vineet, absolutely. This is the right opportunity for all the nations who are taking part in SCO. Firstly, India is the only country which is closer to Western Bloc and Americans on the one side and the Russian and the Chinese on the other side. Mr. Narendra Modi is the only one person who can do a lot of things, like, for example, ending the Ukraine crisis. So that is number one, and India has emerged as a very great part in this SCO summit, and Mr. Narendra Modi had played his card very well. That is number one. Number two, as regards the other countries are also concerned, bilaterally, if they take up the case, now this was the opportunity because they were meeting after 2.5, 3 years after 2019, they were meeting one-to-one. Now this was the right opportunity for all these leaders of these countries to have bilateral relations, to sort out the trade relations for better connectivity, whether it is regional connectivity or inter-regional connectivity, for the, like Mr. Modi had talked about, the food crisis and the energy crisis. All these countries, they can help each other in solving these two problems. So I think this SCO summit has come at the right time for all the countries who have taken part, especially India, Russia and China. Now, as regard the relation between India and Russia is concerned, Russia must understand that India is the only country which can mediate between Russia and the Americans. So the importance of India should be given by the Russian president, and as he has already given it. On the other hand, he must also pressurize China to some extent, as already brought out by Mr. Alexei Maslov, that China should not have this aggressive policy towards India. Because the triangle, what he was talking about, if this triangle, it becomes important and they try to play up with each other in cooperative manner, then I think this will be not only good for this part of the world, it will be good for the entire world. So these three countries, India, Russia and China, they have got very important role, not only in Central Asian countries, all over the world.
Right, great points over there. Ambassador Mukherjee, what are the takeaways that India needs to keep in mind once the SCO is over? There's been a buzz around that Vladimir Putin is very, very keen on making India and China sit at a table and have a face-to-face discussion and sort out their differences as well. But is this something that can be done just at the behest of Putin? And is this really a problem solver that India should be entertaining?
Not at all, Vineet. It reminds me in the past when the United States and earlier our ex-colonial masters, the United Kingdom, used to think that they could mediate between India and Pakistan on Kashmir, for example. There is nothing for President Putin or anyone else to mediate between India and China, because the situation is because of China, not India. China is sitting on our territory since 1962. And after the advent of Xi Jinping, they decided that they would do progressive salami slicing of Indian territory so that they would keep moving inward. Then they would do talks. Then, for instance, they persuaded us to vacate the strategic Kailash Heights, but they did not keep to their side of the bargain. They did some disengagement just before the SCO, but that was just cosmetic. So the point here is that what is President Putin or anyone else going to do? President Putin, who is requesting China to give him weapons, which they have not given, so that he is being obliged to buy drones from Iran and missiles from North Korea, I don't think the Chinese have been actually very supportive to President Putin on Ukraine, if you look at it. If you look at really what has China done, China has actually played the Western card. China has looked while Russia has got weakened. China enjoys the fact that Russian power has been diminished because of Ukraine. That's not what India wants. India wants Russia to remain a great power. And therefore, I don't see any prospect of our Prime Minister agreeing to Russian mediation between Xi Jinping, with whom President Putin has signed a treaty of eternal friendship, and India, to do what? That for us, therefore, to accept that we are equally responsible for the adversarial situation on the line of actual control, for us to say that if China is 50% wrong, we are 50% wrong? Not at all. It is due to Xi Jinping and China's aggressive approach, whether it's on Taiwan, South China Sea, Indo-Pacific, or salami slicing of our territory. They will back off only when we stand up to them. And we will stand up to them and we will teach them a lesson. We will show the Chinese that the India of 1962 does not exist, because that's the only way that you can defeat a bully, because Xi Jinping is a bully and he needs to be taught a lesson. And we don't need any third party to solve that, Vineet.
Great points, ma'am. That's exactly the answer I was looking for my question. Dr. Olga Leonidovna joins us as well on the show. Dr. Olga, if you're there with us.
Yes, I am with you.
Right. Well, how do you summarize India and Russia's relationship vis-a-vis the visuals and the impact that we have seen of both the leaders coming together at the SCO summit? Do you think that, despite the Ukraine war, despite India's altercations with China, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, Russia and India continue to be, a force and a friendship to reckon with?
You see, I absolutely agree that 50 years of really very good and close friendship, you can't just throw out. And I can say that the friendship and the friendly relations from Russians to Indian people, it's a wonderful thing. And also Indians and their attitude to Russia is really very good. And if you visit India, you just feel this friendly attitude to Russia. But we can say only one thing: the economical interests are economical interests. So India now, the country which can choose with whom to dance, or try to dance with Russia and with United States. But at the same time, we can say that when we're speaking about about economy, we can say first of all that the Indian and American trade is 80 billions. And this year, Indian-Russian trade is 8 billions. 80 and 8, it's 10 times bigger. So I hope that this meeting of our president, Vladimir Putin and with your Prime Minister Narendra Modi is very important, and I hope that all this treatment, which already signed, will work. But as we look to all these agreements signed last decades, only few of them are working. So I'm not very optimistic in this field. So I think for India, it's a really very good time just to take something from Russia. And in some ways, Russia is now subsidizing Indian economy. It's my point of view.
Okay. Ambassador Mukherjee, would you want to respond to that?
I would respond by saying that India is actually helping Russia to stay afloat by not giving in to American pressure, by not accepting price caps for Russia, by telling the West that on Ukraine we have our own position, we will not be bullied on Russia. So we are very far from Russia propping up our economy. First of all, the Indian economy is huge, and unfortunately the Russian economy has taken a big beating because of Ukraine and unilateral unfair Western sanctions. We have tried to make sure that Russia and Russian people do not suffer because of these unilateral sanctions. It is utterly unfair to say that Russia is propping up our economy. Not at all. But yes, we are definitely going to ensure that unilateral sanctions don't ensure that Russia is just pushed out of the global economy. That's why we've gone ahead and done what we've done, and we've explained our position to the West. And I think it is also important to understand that just as Russia selected its principal partner to dance with, that's Xi Jinping, because Russia has been dancing with Xi Jinping, then Russians and Russian friends should not blame us if we decide that since China is our principal adversary and we need to protect ourselves from China, and if our former best friend, Russia, has decided to dance only with China, then we have to protect ourselves by turning to those who can defend us when there will be war with China. If there will be a big war between China and India, and if President Putin has signed a treaty of eternal friendship with Xi Jinping, then we can be sure, Vineet, that the support to us will come from the West and not from Russia. So then what do? We have to look at our national security interests just as Russia does. So when they decide to dance with Xi Jinping, it gives India very little choice, because it is not possible for Russia to dance with Xi Jinping on one hand and with us on the other, because in the two dancing partners that he would select, one of them wants to eat up the other. So we have to protect ourselves. So we cannot dance with the dragon. The elephant cannot dance with the dragon. So then the elephant, to defend itself, has to find another partner. Vineet.
Right, absolutely. Great points there, ma'am. Colonel Siroi, if you're there with us. Colonel Siroi?
Yeah, I am here.
Well, you know, the defense economy of Russia is definitely pivoted and pillared by countries like India. And India, you know, of all the other countries in the world, have managed to steer away, or rather avoid the sanctions that the Americans were sending our way, you know, to be friends with Russia and propel the economy that Russia is in so need of right now. Do you think this trend will continue, or would it be right to say that we will be pressing the wrong buttons of the Americans if we continue to expand our defense imports from Russia?
Well, firstly, let me tell you that as we all have been talking about, that so far Russia has been a trusted friend. And when there were no one who was helping out India in 1971 war, and when Americans were sending the 7th Fleet and they had already started moving it towards India, that was the time when Russia came to help us. We must remember that. And if we remember that, then I think what experience we have about the Russians and the Americans were supporting Pakistan, but they could not help Pakistan in avoiding the Bangladesh which took birth after 1971 war. So as far as India is concerned, if we have to trust someone, then I think Russia is one country which we have experienced it and we should trust it. As far as the defense equipment is concerned, most of our defense equipment, except what we are producing indigenously, come from Russia. So perforce all the spare parts and all the technology which we have got, like producing T-72 tanks and other things, that has already been. So our main defense lineup is equipment from Russia. So we have to be with Russia, but we have to do a balancing act so that we don't antagonize Americans, because as Ambassador Mukherjee had brought out, that in case we go all out war with China, and with this another treaty between Russia and China, we have got no choice, but we have to look toward the West. And the West is the only countries, Western countries, who will come to our help. So it is a very, very balancing act. At this point of time, it is very difficult to say, but what my views are that we should carry on with the Russians and do a balancing act. And as far as the equipment is concerned, because it has already improved, when Chinese in 2020, they came to Galwan Heights, that was the time when our defense minister went to Russia and they promised us S-400 and other defense-related equipment. So they are our reliable friend, and we must carry on with that till they prove otherwise.
All right, Mr. Siroi, appreciate your points. This definitely, is a two-way street, and Russia and India both need each other in more ways than one. And it'll be incorrect to say that one's economy is dependent on the other to survive. Well, that's absolutely not the truth, considering that India is bigger than the United Kingdom today.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.